Your go-to garments fit perfectly, flatter your figure, and make you feel spectacular. Make the perfect tank top today on Fit to Stitch.
Fit to Stitch is made possible in part by Husqvarna Viking, keeping the world sewing for over 140 years with innovations in sewing, embroidery, and quilting. Learn more at husqvarnaviking.com. American and Eford, innovators of thread for all your sewing needs. Makers of Entressa sewing thread. Learn more at silhouettepatterns.com. Elliott Berman Textiles, manufacturer of fashion fabrics. ElliotTextiles.com.
When my son was little, his best friend, when he'd get really excited, he'd flap his little hands like this, and we'd all know something really cool was coming. So here I am, flapping my hands because I'm so excited. I'm Peggy Sagers, and we're going to learn all about a tank top today. So if you've never stitched, if you've never sewn on the sewing machine, this could be a show where you take this and go all the way to any of these garments here. It's so much fun, and it's so simple to do. I'm just going to show you how. All right, so let's get started. We're going to start with a tank top. Get any pattern you want. Tank top. Tank top by definition just means it goes over your head, no buttons, no zippers, no linings, no facings, none of that, and it doesn't have sleeves. Now that's by definition. We're going to maybe add some sleeves later, but by definition it's just a garment that slips over your head, no sleeves. So how hard can that be, right? How hard can that be? So the first thing we're going to do is we made a muslin. A muslin just means a sample, a mock-up. We stitched in, we put in a few darts, center front on the fold, center back on the fold, stitch the shoulder seam, stitch the side seams. Just not real complex. So next step we go to fitting. We're going to bring in Jeannie. Jeannie's going to come in, and we've made up this muslin, we've put it on Jeannie, and we're going to drape Jeannie. Now the challenge that Jeannie has, if I can say this on public TV, is Jeannie's large busted, but she's narrow shouldered and she's small up in the shoulders. So sometimes when you get something to fit the bust, it doesn't go anywhere else. So we're going to fix all that. Okay, so again, we're going to go LCD. That's the order we're going to go in. The bust and where it is doesn't need to go up or down. It's fine. The waist where it is, again, is fine. Doesn't need to go up or down. And what I'm going to do in this particular case is I'm going to pin in darts. Whenever you pin in darts, the rule about dart placement is 4 inches from center front or center back. So I actually, in this particular pattern, there's darts at the waist, but I don't even need those because I can just leave the area large, and then I can just drape them in 4 inches from center back. Center front could be the same thing. Go up maybe 4 inches, go down maybe 4 inches. All right, and that will give her back. Now, if she's doing this in a woven, you can't do these darts. Well, you can do the darts, but if you do the darts, you can't get the tank top off because your waist is actually smaller than your bust. So if you decide to make it this fitted, and if you are in a woven, you'll have to put a little invisible zipper in the side seam or some type of zipper in the side seam. But if you do it in a knit, you could make it this fitted, and then the knit will stretch to get over your head. Okay, so I'm okay with the back, but let's look at the front. And one thing in general that really just bugs Jeannie is that she doesn't like the dart because it just doesn't lay right. So again, regardless of size of your tummy, regardless of how you feel about your tummy, you're always better to have these little vertical darts. And again, we're going to make that, I just visual eyeballed them, but you're going to make them 4 inches from center front on each side. That's the rule of placement for that vertical dart. All right, and again, you don't even have to stitch darts. You could do just 2 little folds like that and then leave them loose, or you could go ahead, you know, if you haven't stitched a lot of darts in your life and you're a little intimidated with darts, you could just make that a little pleat and just fold it and stitch it down in place, and it just works really well. That's, again, very complimentary. But again, you can't do that if it's a woven without some kind of opening. You'd have to put in an opening, but if it's a knit, you can. Okay, so with her bust dart now, she's a little bit, you know, number one thing we want to do is we want to move this in. So I'm going to take and put a dart right at center front. And what that's going to do is narrow it at center front. And you say, yeah, but now what am I going to do with it? I'm literally going to taper it all the way down center front to nothing at the hem. So it's going to go smaller, 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 smaller until this is the end of the dart. So basically, if this is your tank top pattern and this is your fabric, I'm literally going to take the dart here. You can see it's very, very little, and it just tapers to nothing at the bottom. So measure how much I'm taking out there. You see it's not much, but boy, it brings those shoulders and narrows them, because what you want is the middle of this tank top strap. You want it to go right over the bust point. Otherwise, your straps will constantly fall down. So if you've got slips or tops or whatever, and you put them on and those straps never stay up, it's because the straps are too wide. So you'll have to do that in the back also. So again, just do a little dart at center back, measure the size of it, and then just take the tissue like this, move it off that amount, and taper to nothing but leave the bottom. So you can see it's just really not taking off much at all right around the bust line area. But that will narrow those shoulders sufficiently. Okay, so what I was started to say is what she's a little bit nervous about, what she doesn't like, is she doesn't like how that dart is so large and it just doesn't end gracefully for her. When she goes to sew it, it doesn't end gracefully. So as long as I have a dart anywhere along the side seam, it will do the job that this dart will do. It doesn't have to be coming right from this section, even if the pattern does. So I'm actually going to undo it. And she basted it together, basted beautifully, I may add. So that means with just a couple of pulls, look at that, that dart's history. So along with it being history there, I also want to take out the side seam a little bit because I'm going to have to redrape the side. Now don't be nervous about this, because this is a really easy thing to do. I'm just going to undo it up to the point of the dart, and all I'm going to do is drape that dart lower. And by draping it lower, what I did is I left a large seam allowance, so we've got a good 1.5 inch seam allowance, so that when you change the dart angle, the dart end is going to be a little different. So by changing that angle, you can see I've got much more distance for that dart to actually taper out gradually. And that will make her happier as far as stitching a dart. So this is really if you've got a large bust and you find that when you go to stitch a dart, it's just not, if it's coming from the side seam or under the arm, and it's just not ending like you like it to, then go ahead and lower it down. Now you can see that I'm missing a little bit of end here. What you'll want to do is just put it down on paper and fill in all that end. So you can see that that's much more flattering on her than it would be to have it up here. And it's also an angular line, so it's a little more flattering than a horizontal line. It smooths out that. Always check the shoulder seam. Make sure that shoulder seam is picked up nice and tight so that that armhole doesn't gap. You know, I call it the grocery store look when you go to the grocery store and women have on tops and you can kind of see in one armhole and out the other. It's not a good look. Well, maybe if you're male, but most of us don't want that look. So we're going to keep that armhole nice and tight, and there she goes. Easy enough. It's just a really simple process. Jeannie, thank you, sweetie. You're welcome. And now we're going to go to the table, and we're going to do lots of options because there's so many options to do with this tank top. First off, we're going to make a little tank dress. Especially in the summertime, really even in the wintertime. You can go all year round by just taking and adding length to the tank top. How much length you add is totally your decision because it's all depending on how modest you want to be. The tank dress that I have on is a little bit longer than this one, but usually from the bottom I add about 16 inches. And the reason I do that, and let's go back to the pattern. Some of you may say, wow, 16 inches from the bottom of my blouse, that's too long. But I add that much because I figure I can always make it shorter, and once it's too short, I'm not going to wear it. And maxi dresses are great too, so you could even go long if you wanted to. I would recommend that you do something at the waist. I think a little bit of gathering, something just helps it, kind of gives it a little bit of stop or flow or gives it some shaping that's really nice. So all you have to do to the here is measure from the bottom, 16 inches, draw a rectangular, and then you want to make sure it goes over your hips. So what I do is I take and measure, and let's just pick a number that's easily divisible by 4. I'm going to say 44. So I'll go down, I'll come out. 44 divided by 4 is 11 because I've got 2 front panels and 2 back panels. So I've got 4 total panels. So I'll make sure that the 11, when I bring it down, is here. And then I just bring the French curve from the side out to that point and down and over. So just add length at the bottom. Just remember to add plenty so that you will have enough. Again, if it's too tight around your hips, you'll have to make it a tank top and not a tank dress, but you know, that's always doable too. Okay, so the first thing is we've got a little tank dress. And then I love it with some type of little wrap. And again, you could even do this and make it really fancy. You could make it black silk, you could make it your little black dress, and it could take you a whole 30 minutes to make this dress. Okay, so from there, we're going to add a pleat down the front. You see a lot of tank tops in the store, and I think a tank top is really hard to buy and have it fit well, because most of the time that darting is not correct, and because the darting isn't correct or the shoulder angle is not correct, we get these big gaps in our armholes. And so we wear them, but we put a jacket on, but we're so embarrassed we can never take our jacket off when we have this tank top on, and it's just kind of silly that this happens. This is a very small piece of cloth, so to manipulate it and get it right is really not hard to do. Okay, so with this one here, I want to show you that this is just a pleat that's added right down the front. And so all it is extra fabric. I'm going to kind of open it up a little bit and show you that all I did was add 2 inches at center front, and then I opened it, split it, pressed it down, and incorporated it in the top and bottom. I added a little glitz on there. So that means what you're going to do to the front of this, and I'm going to pretend that the orange is now my tissue, and I'm literally going to just take 2 inches to center front, and I'm going to add 2 inches all the way down when I cut out, and that's it. That's the only change I'm making. You're going to actually stitch all the way down at center front, and then the pleat opens in both directions, and it makes that great pleat going down the front. How easy is that? All right, so next we're going to do the little white tank, because our necklines, we have so many fun little treats at the necklines. What we see a lot of times is gathers, and you could do gathers and pleats are done the exact same way. So I went ahead and pleated these, but certainly you could gather them as well. All right, so let's look at the tank top. The first thing I decided was where I wanted, and I had, you know, I go shopping, and when I shop, I look for things like this, just little changes that, you know, a lot of times these tank tops are $60 and $70. They're just really high price. This little tank top is $400, but we'll get to that in a minute. So I want you to recognize that you can start off really simple and then just kind of scale your way up when you're ready to. So that's kind of what we're going to do. In this particular case, when I was copying this, I noticed that that's center front, and then if you notice, they're little 1/2 inch increments all the way out from center front. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then each of those are about a 1/2 inch space in between. And in between here, you could put beads or buttons, or, you know, I put these little silver grommets, but there's so many things that could be done, even nothing could be done. So I come back to the pattern, and I leave my little distance at the front, and then I start a line that goes every 1/2 inch 6 times. So I make a little mark on my pattern. Then I'm going to simply cut, and where am I going to cut to? And if you notice, whenever you make a pleat or a gather, that the amount, there's 2 things that are important. The amount you open it, or how much larger you actually make that pleat, and where the pleat is headed to. So if I cut this pleat over here, then it'll head over there and it won't head down. So I want to be careful that I not only open them the right amount, but that I also slash the pattern in the direction that that pleat is going. So if you'll notice, and those are just simple little things, this pleat went to the side, to the side, to the side, and then to the bottom. So I'd literally get those pleats gravitating throughout the whole pattern. Once I did that, we can look at the orange. I wanted you to see this. I even cut right through the dart. Don't even worry about the dart, because all I'm going to do is redraw that dart and nothing will change. Easy enough. And I open them up each 1 inch because they're going to be a 1/2 inch when they're closed. And then I put paper behind them. So this is actually what the paper looks like as I fill it in, and that becomes my pattern. All right. Now the only thing tricky about this, it's very simple to just cut and spread and add and all that. But actually when I go to make it, I actually have to hem the neck edge before I make the pleats. Because if you make the pleats beforehand, then there's no way to hem the neck edge. So you're going to go ahead and hem this whole entire neck edge. And actually our sewing methods today, I'm going to show you how to finish off these neck edges. I'm going to give you a couple options that are real quick and very simple. But I'd go ahead and finish this off. And then you notice I stitch my pleats. And when I stitch them, I just sew them in at maybe 2 inches down. And then let them just relax. And then put your little grommets in. Okay, very easy to do. And I love that. It's very soft. It can be done in lots of different fabrics. And as long as I have the pleats there, they don't actually have to be pleats. They could be gathers. I could go ahead and gather all the way through here and then put a facing on the back side that held those gathers in place. That would be a very similar look. Okay. Now we're going to do this leather top. Love this leather top. It doesn't have to be leather, and I did it twice. I did it twice because this is real close to the original. This is very, very close to the original. So the goal for me in this particular case was to save money and improve fit. I saw this when I was shopping. It was around $400. I didn't think it was necessary to spend $400 on a little tank top. And I also wanted to improve color placement. So my first thought was the white's at the bottom, and if the white's at the bottom, your eye goes to the bottom. I don't want everybody looking down there. I'm going to put the white at the top. And so this was really my mock-up. So whenever you are doing something that's asymmetrical, you're going to copy this tank top, and you're going to do it twice. So I take the front, and I trace it, and then I take it to the other side, and I trace it again. So I'm actually dealing with the whole front, and it's just the front. Then if you notice, and I actually did this off a picture. I saw the real garment, but then I found the picture online, and I printed out the picture so that I could get pretty close to where this started at the top. You notice it's a straight angle line to the bottom. And then this is just 2 pieces, and this is just 3 pieces. And then where they intersect, you kind of wanted to pay attention to all that. So here's the pieces. We're going to put them together. I've got the tank top. And again, here's my original. I copied it one this side. I flipped it to copy the next side. Now I went ahead and I added a little bit of length at the bottom just to make sure I had enough there. So notice my first cut was right from the shoulder seam, straight angle to the bottom. And because I had a photo, I could kind of measure how wide this was, how wide that was. I could kind of measure all the proportions. But even if it wasn't exactly right, it just doesn't really matter. It's the whole concept of the pieces and the tank top, and if you like that, then you can duplicate it. All right, so then this side was cut into 2. This side was cut into 3. These 2 pieces intersected the one piece at some point. And then as I cut apart, seam allowance is added. 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 Seam allowance is already on the rest of this. So I only wrote add seam allowance on those places I cut so that when I put it on my fabric, I wouldn't forget. Once I had done it in fabric, the back of this tank top is a knit. So I can get the front of this tank top fitting really well, and I can then go to the back, and it's a knit so that it can have the shape I want. It can also still expand so I can get it off. So the back is just a solid black knit. I could do a rayon knit. I could do lots of different fabrics back there. And then I went ahead and decided to stitch it in leather. I love the top on. I actually saw it on a TV show just the other day. What I really want you to notice, though, is when you go to do it in leather and you open the seam and you go to top stitch, you really need to change the thread color out as you go to the different leathers. It's really important to match that thread color. And the reason I say that is because as I notice higher end garments, that's one thing you're paying for, is that they've taken the time, the labor, to literally change those spools of thread, and they don't stitch orange on white and just kind of blatantly go all over the place. It has a tendency to make the garment look a little cheaper. So be careful to kind of match those thread colors to everywhere you're going throughout. Okay, so look at all kinds of things we're making. I want to show you one more thing, because going back to the leather for just 1 minute, the reason I went ahead and did this was I decided that if I was going to copy the tank, the $400 tank, I was going to copy it exactly like it was. So at least if anyone recognized it, they'd think I've at least paid $400 for the tank. Isn't that a terrible reason to switch it back? But that's why I did it. But I have a tendency to still like this one because the lighter color is at the top. All right, one more use of this pattern. Now, this is a tank, and the reason I wanted you to see this is what you can really see is a pattern is not casual. A pattern is not casual or dressy. It's simply the fabric that makes it dressy or makes it casual. So I wanted to show you that you could use glitzy and go real fancy, or you could use and make a little camisole out of this same tank top. This is the same tank top pattern. All I did is narrow the strap. And when you go to narrow the strap, again, don't narrow it from one side or another. Preserve the center, use the French curve and bring it in, and use the neck edge and bring it to that point. Preserve the middle. Don't take it all off of one side or all off the neckline. Keep the middle and then go out from there, and you'll get these little tiny straps, and you can make your little camisole and a little slip to match. So I want to go to the sewing machine because I want to show you just several different ways that we can take this tank and just finish off the neck edge. And these are so simple. If you don't have a serger, and if you're dealing with a woven top, you really don't need to, or if you're dealing with a knit top, you really don't need to serge the edge. I serge the edge simply because I have a serger and I think it looks better. And if I were sewing, I remember the days where I did not have a serger, and I just love the way it looks with a serged edge. So I do a serged edge. And all you do is serge it around. I'm turning under 3/8 of an inch. 3/8, that's it. It won't work with 5/8. And I'm just going to go all the way around. Obviously, you want to do this with a matching thread. I guess you don't want to do it necessarily with a matching thread, but I think it looks better with a matching thread, but it gives you a really nice line all the way here. That's one way. I wanted to show you a couple other ways that you can do this. This is just what I call turning the edge under and just serging it. And again, you're going to stitch it with a matching thread. This one here is just a little bit of ribbing. Measure the neck edge, make the ribbing 3/4 of the length of the neck edge, and stitch it on place. This is a little fold-over elastic. Very simple to do, very easy to do. And this is a little piece of, now this is a woven. This particular case, we're using a woven. And what I'm using is just a purchased fold-over bias tape. And this little bias tape is already pre-made. Very simple to do. I just open it up. I put it on the edge. It's all evenly pressed and everything. And then I can just go through and stitch it from one side or the other. So this is a real easy way also to finish. And I think all of these methods really are very simple to do and clean. I would suggest that the very first time you go to do this, since we've never sewn and never fit before, that you do this one. I think this one really is a simple thing to do. And always remember, like after you do it, you'll get a few wrinkles in there, but once you press, that pressing will make those wrinkles simply go away. By the time you get all the way around that neck edge, it really just lays down beautifully flat. Okay, very easy to do. Okay, so our goal here today is regardless of if you've never sewn a tank top before, if you've never sewn anything before, I want you to be able to come in, make the muslin, fit it, a couple things to change to get it exactly like you want it, and then we can do all kinds of little tops. Doesn't mean we have to make a whole wardrobe for ourselves, but it certainly means we could do a lot of little things. Now, in close, I want to show you a couple little issues that I think are important with a tank top. Sometimes, if we just not sure, lay that French curve on there and get the shape of that neck. And that way, if it's too low, I can extend the center front seam up, and I can raise it just a little bit. And then, if I decide I want it a little lower, don't change these points here, but I can make that as low as I need it to go. Keep it on the rounder part of the curve, And that way it won't become a V-neck. If you get it too angled, it'll become a V-neck as opposed to a tank top. A tank top typically has a rounded neck as opposed to a V-neck. If you want a V-neck, I guess you know how to do that. All right? You know, a little while ago, I was amazed when I was shopping that I saw a tank top for $780. And I thought, how can a tank top be $780? I put it on, I tried it on, I was at the store. It fit beautifully. It absolutely fit beautifully, but you can do that. You can make it fit beautifully. You can pick the fabrics you like, which is what I really love to do. This is a cashmere, leather, silk knit. You can just pick anything you want, and you can do it all yourself. So I think it's the perfect fitting thing for all of us. We won't get the grocery store look, and it'll look great every time we sit down. Our sewing time is maybe 30 minutes to an hour to produce it, and we will just love everything we do. I think it's a little adventurous to push you off into other arenas, but that's all a good thing. So grab a little confidence, grab a little piece of fabric, and let's go and let's make some tank tops. Join us next time as we talk about all the secrets of sewing with leather. So if you're a little bit intimidated, don't be. We'll show you how to just do it perfect.
Visit fittostitch.com for all of the patterns and instructions found on today's show, plus more tutorials, webcasts, and techniques from this season of Fit to Stitch. This is show 206. If you enjoyed today's show and want to learn more about fitting with Peggy Sagers, a DVD set of all 13 episodes of Fit to Stitch Season 200 is available at fittostitch.com for $49.99 plus shipping. Fit to Stitch is made possible in part by Husqvarna Viking, keeping the world sewing for over 140 years with innovations in sewing, embroidery, and quilting. Learn more at husqvarnaviking.com. American and Eford, innovators of thread for all your sewing needs. Makers of Entressa sewing thread. Learn more at silhouettepatterns.com. Elliott Berman Textiles, manufacturer of fashion fabrics. elliottbermantextiles.com.